with W.Tech, Women in Tech Community. We are building an international community of women and allies in tech, founded by Ukrainians. All of us hosts here are Ukrainians too. And we have a couple of main important things why the community was built in the first place. And first, we want to try to support women in tech industry and also in digital businesses, both as employees and as founders. We want to help and promote and empower personal development and career opportunities. And our focus is, of course, in the midst of all of this, support human value, equality, and empower women. Here in Austin, yeah? Oh, yeah. We have 3 partners here in Austin. You can see us all in this corner. So it's me, Yulia. I'm in B2B marketing and Expedia Group and also brand ambassador for Honeycomb Software. Oля, our moderator, she's gonna tell a bit more later, but she's also at Expedia Group as a performance marketer, and also she's a board member at the Plastic Reduction Project. She represents our NGO and non-profit side. And we also have Lucy. She's the Chief Partner Officer at Big Sister AI and co-founder at White Sales. She's also a resident here at Capital Factory. So I will pass the word to her briefly to tell about our venue. Sorry.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you here and to see you here. I maybe will say a few words about our general partner, Capital Factory, why we are here. So I'm the portfolio company of Big Sister AI portfolio company of Capital Factory. And Capital Factory is our partner where you can find a co-working center and big center where you can find partners and other people who can help you with entrepreneurship. So if this side of career is interesting for you, so welcome to Capital Factory too. Please.
Yeah, thanks again, Capital Factory, and we also have one speaker to represent Capital Factory, but again, about this a couple of minutes later. Also, some important updates. So we created the calendar, and we have already the schedule for all of the events coming up this year. So just subscribe to the calendar at luma/wtech.atx, so you're gonna get the notifications about all of the events. Then also the global chapter, the global nonprofit W.Tech is launching the app for its members. And before, when you filled in the application, you would be in either Telegram or WhatsApp chat. Now they build the app. It's already open for us partners, and they're gonna open it for all the members and migrate all the members in the coming months. So please, if you're not a member yet, sign up, because that's how you'll be able to see all the activity for all the chapters, not only Austin. And we have some really great plans on launching already podcast and some columns by different industry expertise, so please join. And we are looking forward to your feedback and topic requests. As always, as the previous events, feel free to come find us, and also you will receive the feedback form after the event. Be sincere, tell everything that you liked and didn't like, so we can make this event better for you. And my last slide here. So if you are not a member, please scan that QR code and fill in the application, so then you can be added to that app and receive all of the notifications and updates, and just follow the W.Tech social. And at this moment, I will just pass the word to our moderator so we can start talking about the confessions.
Hi. Okay. I might be awkward. So hi, I'm Oля. As Yulia mentioned, I work at Expedia Group. I do performance marketing, but I also love nonprofit world. So I participate in I'm on board in 2 climate nonprofits here in Austin area. So if you want to talk sustainability, anything climate, please, would love to connect. And we decided to start this year in this series with, I think, really important topic how do you, recruiter's confession, how do you find the job, what skills you need showcase in your resume, how to connect with recruiter, truly connect, and how to understand the pains of recruiter as well, because they're human beings, and they go through so many applications, and it's so difficult. So we wanted to bring the panel and these three amazing speakers today to help us get into, open the window to that world and share some insights on what does it mean to be a recruiter and how we can connect with them. So we would love to better understand you. I will have a bit of questions to ask from our panelists, and then we'll have it around 7:15 and Q&A session. So get ready, don't be shy, ask questions. It's an interactive panel, so I would love to first take a breather and introduce three of our panelists. So we have Nicolette Jackson. She is a talent acquisition professional and HR executive with over a decade of experience. She loves shaping people's strategies from the ground up, and she thrives in a dynamic startup environment and has an experience working in a variety of different industries. Tech, home real estate, home insurance, skilled traded sectors. We also have here Julia Sterner Holden. She's a talent strategist with a knack for connecting businesses with the right people, with the right talent. She has really interesting background because Julia worked both in US and outside of US, and I think it will be really cool to hear your experience working with two different markets and cultures as well. And now she leads recruitment and talent acquisition for Human Agency and its joint ventures, including the Build Fellowship. And as mentioned previously by my amazing hosts, just want to make sure that I'm covering everything. We have Jake Tusky. He's a People Strategy Manager here at the Capital Factory. Previously, he worked at ASU, correct? He was leading Lodestar Center for Philanthropy and Nonprofit Organizations, leading impactful programs like Public Alliance of Arizona, and he supported leadership development and community engagement. So please meet our three wonderful speakers with a great background. And also, I didn't cover everything that you have, all of the background you guys have. And I would love to give you actually a couple minutes to introduce yourselves. And let's start with you, Nicolette.
So my name's Nicolette. I'm from Texas, South Texas, and I think it's really important, especially if we're trying to humanize recruiters. I'll give you my origin story and why I became a recruiter to begin with. So when I was little, I watched my dad lose his job in the 90s, which was a bit of a downturn, and he was also a black man. And so he went from an executive to director to interviewing for jobs at Walmart. He was really trying to get his foot in the door anywhere. And when I found out recruiting was a career, and that there was a person in that room that he was talking to that was their job to judge and to figure out whether or not he was deserving of an opportunity, that was absolutely the seat I wanted to sit in. And so throughout my career, I've tried to go and be the person that is, judging those situations, but then also getting into HR and building cultures that will then also make people like that feel comfortable, right? And so the whole genesis of my career really comes from finding people and putting them in environments where they feel like they will belong, but then also doing the work to make sure that the environments will be friendly to that. So I've gone through all types of recruiting, both agency, in-house, tech. I've built companies several times from zero to IPO and exits. It's all about people. It's all about relationships. I'll never stop saying that. And so that's what I do and why I'm here to share more.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jake. I am from Phoenix, Arizona originally. I've been in Texas now for about 4 years. My background includes really, at a young age, early 20s, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and so I got involved with a program called Public Allies that was housed out of ASU. It is an AmeriCorps program. I don't know if you've heard of AmeriCorps. It's like a domestic Peace Corps. I got my start there, wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be involved in community. Through my time with Public Allies, the program itself was a nonprofit leadership development program, so I would go and work with different executive directors of different nonprofits, governmental agencies, and higher ed institutions, create capacity building initiatives, so essentially build roles out for these different companies, and then place those roles with individuals. Our target demographic in this program was marginalized youth and individuals who otherwise might not have had the accolades needed that you might think that most recruiters are looking for. And so my recruiting experience is unique in that I'm oftentimes looking for other skills that make a strong candidate. Here at Capital Factory, now a totally different sector, right? I went from nonprofit higher ed to now being in VC and in tech, completely different. And I like to think that through my time here at Capital Factory, I've been able to take some of those core values that I look for in individuals and implement them in a new company and in a field that oftentimes might overlook some of those characteristics. So that's a little background of where I'm from.
Hello, I'm Julia. As Olya mentioned, I have another atypical trajectory. So I was, in another lifetime, an opera singer. And so initially, after graduation, moved to Europe, lived in Germany for 10 years. First as a singer, then as a teacher, early childhood, which I do think prepares you really well for recruiting and dealing with hiring managers, both sides of the equation. Before making, again, the transition into recruiting. And like Nicolette said, that wasn't even a career that was on my radar. So it really was just post-MBA falling into it. And I started on the agency side of recruiting in Germany, in the DACH region, in med tech and life sciences. So when I tell you, I'm talking to an audience of many Ukrainians, I imagine. So you all know what working with Germans is like, I imagine. Tough audience. Definitely a place to grind your recruiting chops, if you will. And then when I moved back to the US, I started with another tech-focused agency, so still on the agency side. And my task was to build out here in Austin a marketing and creative practice. So establishing building that from the ground up. And when was it? I guess 2 years ago, I made the switch internal, although internal sort of a weird way of phrasing it, because not only do I lead talent acquisition for human agency, so we are a boutique consulting firm, but we also have a VC arm. So I'm essentially the talent partner for all of our portfolio companies, for our business partners, and a lot of the time helping them establish recruitment from the ground up. So working, like Nicolette said, with founders, working with folks that just have no idea what they're doing and really need your help. And so again, that's where the teaching experience comes into play. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What a wonderful speakers we have today. We really appreciate you coming and agreeing doing this. So I would love to start with the first topic, which is resumes. It's a tough one, right? It's really hard. You have to have 25 of them. So I think the question we have as a group probably, and what is one thing that can really help the candidate stand out in a resume, but it's often getting overlooked by the candidates. What do you notice first? Would you like to start from Julia or?
As someone that's recruiting a lot of marketers and creatives, I have opinions. I think formatting is like it's so simple. And again, I'm just going to relay on an example from Germany. Contractors in Germany, especially when you're talking about like IT guys, I would read 50-page resumes, which is like unheard of in the US, right? You think like, that's psychotic. Why would anyone do that? But I kind of bring that mentality to formatting, like make it short, make it concise, but know your audience and know what you're trying to say, right? So do not be generic, be metric driven, be data driven. Show those numbers, show those results, no matter what. I know this sounds, again, so basic. Please, please, please hyperlink your LinkedIn. Please, 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 please. If you're a creative, portfolio should be on there. If you're an engineer, GitHub. We want to be able to go to your resume and see all information in like a concise, consolidated space. You know, there's a lot of tools out there that make this really easy, but we're also the people behind the ATS. And so you want your resume to get past the ATS and the AI crawlers. So that's where, like, looking at the job description, formatting, rewriting, rewording things. I know it means that maybe you have 25 resumes, but have a basic resume template that you can kind of like plug and play with and make it specific to that role and to that opportunity.
Would you agree? Have anything maybe else to add about the formatting? It's interesting when you say formatting. Is it 1 page? Is it 2 page? Does it mean that the borders have to be, you know, like tiny, small, like hyperlinking? Do you put the link of your LinkedIn, or do you hyperlink your name to take you to the LinkedIn? We love specifics up here. Thank you.
So most of you are in tech, I'm assuming. Applicant tracking systems are not very sophisticated. So if you send me something with gorgeous formatting, it's probably going to come over as like garbled up gunk whenever it shows through. And I like to speed read, and most applicant tracking systems give you a format in which you just pull up your resume, I could speed read through it, and then I keep going, right? And if I have to get out of my system to open another system to get to your PDF or whatever fancy thing you put in there, it's going to slow me down and it's going to make me less likely. And I know that all my team of recruiters is not going to be digging that deep. So as much as I would like to say they are, they're not always going to. And so just guard yourself there. No pictures on your resume. It's not culturally relevant here. And then as far as content, what I would say the best way to format your resume is, one, like give a short 2 to 3 sentence reference of like, what were you doing there? Like, you joined the company because you're reporting to, give me a little story, because we like stories, we're storytellers by nature. And then you can have your bullet points just be your job description, right? Like the run of the mill, and most of the time you're gonna want them to match the job description that you're applying for. The run of the mill, however they said you do what you do, just let them do that and you match that language there. And then in your highlights section, that's when you really want to show your business relevance. You know, what is closest to the money? They want to know, especially hiring managers, those are the things that they want to know. What did you do and how did it impact money? What project did you work on? How much money did it make? How many people did you hire? What did you actually do? What are the meats of the results that you did? And when you're building those things, ask your boss, ask people, to give you that context to the project you're working on, because it's really helpful for your resume. As you're working in jobs, write that stuff down too as you're going. Your one-on-one doc with your manager can also be a great reference point for good bullets. I go back and look at my one-on-one docs with past leaders and say, oh yeah, I did do that. If you had a good leader, you'll have some good notes. But I just think as far as when you're looking to build, those are the meat of where to start on the content.
Jake. Thank you, Nicolette.
Yeah, I think, resumes are unique. I think when it comes to a standard, generally, unless you have 10 plus years of experience, should your resume be more than one page? Again, resumes are subjective to who's looking at it, right? And the reality is that with multiple eyes on one thing, it can be interpreted differently by someone else. I think my biggest takeaway when it comes to resumes would be make sure there are no errors on there grammatically. Like if there are periods at the end of each bullet point but not on like one or two, that could make a difference, right? That shows like, oh, they're not combing through and as detail oriented as we might need this individual to be. This is your one opportunity to really make that impression. I think it's also important, and we can go down a whole rabbit hole of AI and how challenging that has made things for recruiters. But I think in your resume, if you can look at it and be as concise as possible, less is more, right? You create the high key points relevant to the role you're applying to, and yeah, unfortunately, you might have to create a resume specific to that role, right? You want that job posting in your resume to reflect exactly what it is that you've done in previous roles and why that makes you qualified for that role. I want to be able to look at a resume. I don't want to have to read too much. I want to see the high bullet points that are going to make me think, ooh, I want to hear more about this. Like, I want to hear more about their experience. I don't have time to sit there and read 7 bullet points of 2-sentence, obviously include achievements. We want to see numbers and so forth. So I think less can be more, and I think there are also some tips and tricks as far as humanizing the interview process, but I think as it relates to the resume, high level, make sure it's nice to look at, less is more, and create a sense of you're conveying what that role needs, leaving the recruiter or someone wanting to ask more about it.
Awesome, thank you. So basically, just a regular Word document, black and white, normal, at times New Roman, whatever, with just having a nice bullets, and you'll be fine explaining your experience and making sure it's tied up to the job description. So I feel like as a people we tend to overthink so much and like try to make. I did. Probably when I was at the beginning of my career, I'm like, I need this beautiful violet pink resume because I'm in marketing, and now I'm like, oh well, no. So just make sure that it's basics, and if you cover it with the basics, you're gonna win. I mean, having keywords, of course, and all that stuff, but.
I think the best analogy as a candidate or as a recruiter. So when I'm a recruiter, can you imagine whenever you were studying and you had to study and you knew you were studying just for the highlights of a test, right? And so you're going in there and like, okay, I'm just gonna read the paragraphs that are relevant to the test because I just wanna highlight the things and get the answers right on the test. That is exactly what it's like being a recruiter and reading 100,000 resumes. You're going through and you're trying to read a book that's 100,000 pages long, but you just need to find the relevant information. You need to find the things that are gonna make you excited that, okay, that's gonna be on the test. That's gonna be in this role. That's what we're doing all day. We're sitting there behind the screen saying, okay, like let's get excited because we can finally get into what we're reading because we're like, okay, this is relevant to what I'm needing to know, so.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah, and just to give you a sense of the numbers, so Human Agency, for example, is a company, we're roughly 35 people, okay? I recently was recruiting for a chief of staff and I'm a team of 1, so it's me, myself, and I. Within a week of the posting, I had over 800 applicants, okay? So when Nicolette, when Jake, when I are saying these things, I mean, it's really, can you imagine how much time and energy it would take to actually, like, with a fine-tooth comb, with a magnifying glass, like, go through all 800 of those resumes, right? So I always think of, like, your resume is what gets you in the door. Your resume is like, this is eye-catching. This is the reason that someone wants to take a call with you. This is the reason that someone wants to go on a date with you. Nicolette had a really good analogy earlier too.
Recruiting is online dating. And looking for a job these days is online dating. Let's just
so this is your dating profile.
This is your dating profile. Your resume is your dating profile. Your personality and all of those other things will get you the job, right? And it will actually get you in the door, but nobody's going to talk to you if they don't like your profile. They're not going to want to take the time. And so you really just got to make sure you're making your profile relevant to them and what they're looking for. It's hard. It's hard. I'm looking for a job right now too, and even me, and knowing those faux pas myself, I'm like, oh gosh, like I don't have to write this out or do these things, but I know it matters. I know that at the end of the day, it will matter to that recruiter sitting behind that desk. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for such an extensive response. I really appreciate all the tips. I'm sure the audience as well. I would love to move to the second question. It's more connected to the online presence. So just curious, because I don't think we know. We think we know, but we don't know. So how much weight does someone's LinkedIn profile or any other social media channels play in assessing, you know, are they right for the job? And what's like one red flag for you?
If someone doesn't have a LinkedIn. Now, I was in the skilled trades profession recently, and they think LinkedIn is silly and would never, but I would say for this audience, if you don't have a LinkedIn, I'm pretty suspect of you. Or honestly, one random thing is like an old email, like a Hotmail, you know, or something. Yeah. Oh no. You know, you just start to
So Gmail.
yeah.
Gmail.
And then as far as your online presence in general, I would say it needs to be tailored, especially for appropriate audiences. Your LinkedIn and everything needs to be your professional. Your Instagram and all those things. Just go through and scrub that you don't look like an absolute like nut job, right? Like so it's not the recruiters that you really have to worry about. The hiring managers really go in on this. They'll come to my meetings sometimes and they'll be like, oh, I found this on this candidate. Absolutely not a fit. And I'm like, okay, calm down. And, you know, then we have to like fight for you. So don't put anything that I'm going to have to like argue for you for to say like maybe they didn't really mean that, you know. So just make sure that everything's private, locked down, and be careful because your friends of friends can see things too, and they might be connected to companies. And so it's always good when you're looking for a job just to scrub all that stuff out.
So they look at the social media as well, not just LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, anything they can find.
Lock those
Leave
Instagram
out online dating
profiles.
people, right? If you're gonna go on an online date with someone, they're gonna look you up. They're gonna find the hiring managers are absolutely doing the same thing.
And this is actually like a horror story, so it's leading into the next one, but it relates to social media. Because I recruit in tech primarily, I go to LinkedIn, I go to portfolios, I go to websites, I go to GitHubs, etc. So going to Facebook or going to X or going to Instagram was not like second nature to me. But as Nicolette said, when you're hiring for trades or hiring folks that are not necessarily super active on LinkedIn, the go-to for these hiring managers is to check out social media presence. And so this was a huge lesson learned for me because I was hiring like an office manager for this landscape company in Shreveport, Louisiana, okay? So very specific, very small pool. Found someone I loved. She was great. She presented great. The hiring managers loved her in the initial interview. They wanted to bring her into the office. Before they brought her into the office, they went to Instagram. Instagram was public. There was some really, really inappropriate, like just completely like Internet 101, do not do this. You know, so or put it behind a paywall, I guess. And so was this woman invited on site? No, the interview was canceled. So it's just like, be your own best friend, like be your own advocate, and like just with the LinkedIns of it all, ask yourself, like, what is the purpose of this? Like, what am I trying to achieve? Am I trying to be like a LinkedIn influencer and build my brand that way? And know that by doing so, maybe I am positioning myself out of like certain markets or out of certain jobs. If that is not what you're looking for and your job is to be like highly marketable to this company or to this company or this industry, again, that's your brand. So like with your resume, like build out your LinkedIn to reflect that, right? Highlight that, get recommendations, put skills on there, flesh out your things so that like your LinkedIn, all those profiles should be complementary to your resume. They shouldn't be a one-to-one. They should be telling a broader story. So, 2 cents.
Yeah, I think, you know, like Nicolette said, a LinkedIn is almost essential nowadays. It's kind of terrifying the amount of applications that come into some of our roles that aren't even people, but that are a full resume. Like, I legit have been stumped at times because I'm like, this seems like a good candidate, but then I look a little closer and you really have to like figure out that this is not actually a real person. It's AI.
Or someone in the Philippines.
Yeah, or a spam or whatever it is. And so there's oftentimes we hear like, I just feel like a number in the process. A, because of the sheer amounts of people that might be applying for a role, but B, we need to be able to confirm that you are in fact a human, because it's getting harder and harder to do that nowadays. And so, you know, if you don't have a LinkedIn, it's never too late to create one. That's an easy way for me to be like, oh, okay, this is a person, right? Like, have your face on it, the content on your LinkedIn should reflect on what is on your resume too. I have seen on a resume director of something, and on the LinkedIn it was like specialist of this. And so there does need to be consistency in those things, but that shouldn't be an issue if you've done those things, right? And so I think baseline LinkedIn, I definitely encourage all of you to have that. And if not, you know, I don't think it's a bad practice, just again, with the sheer amount of applications that come in. If you can find a contact at the company, hiring manager, recruiter, and following up saying, hey, submitted my resume, you know, attaching it here just to make sure you received it, would love to hear more, you know, about the role, blah, 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 blah. Because at least that's another way to kind of sift past, like, oh, I'm just another number.
So interesting. Do you read the resume first? You then have a pool of resumes you liked, and then you go and you look at the online presence, or is it happening simultaneously?
I immediately look at LinkedIn to see if they're a real person.
Okay.
And a lot of these fake resumes also are now creating like fake LinkedIn profiles, but you again start seeing like thematically, okay, this is like a picture that seems very sus, or like this now like LinkedIn profile reads like 10 other LinkedIn profiles I have just read, like verbatim, word for word. Make your picture be you. Please don't use like AI. Please don't use like a filter. Like, make yourself look like who you are, and make yourself like sound and be human, right?
Because also verify your LinkedIn profile.
Yes, smart.
So you can, you know, with your clear ID, just be verified, and that's added assurance for me that I have that little check mark.
And you see it on the on the back end or something?
It's right next to your name. It's just like everyone just shows verified, and you're like, okay, great, this is a real person.
Okay, great. So to sum up, it's basically just fill out the LinkedIn, have the LinkedIn, try to fill out all the boxes, skills, you know, have the recommendations. It's really helpful as well. And follow up, right? When you apply.
Use it as a research tool. You know, that's my #1 research tool. So she's talking about, I beat out, not to self-brag, 2,000 applicants at my last role, and it was all about LinkedIn. There's the only reason why I was able to stand out of 2,000 people. I was able to see the job poster was connected to 2 or 3 connections over. So happened that person loved me and walked me right into the hiring manager's office, right? It was that magical, right? And so LinkedIn can honestly make or break your search for you. So be nosy, get on the company page, see who works there, who are you connected to, send notes. You know, it really does move the process so much. Like you said, you can either, as a recruiter, sit and look at 1,000 resumes, or you could say, oh, in my LinkedIn inbox, somebody sent me somebody that already applied. Do first apply. I do not like when somebody is very like highfalutin and they email the CEO and then I don't have their application. And that's when I tell the CEO they didn't even do the due diligence to apply yet. So now we're gonna have to wait for their resume and do all the other stuff, even though you want to set up an interview, right? So always apply first, then reach out to people, because then it seems like you did the work and the due diligence. You weren't just trying to step around the process. You entered the process respectfully, but then you knocked on some doors.
Don't be messy.
Yeah. Don't
Please don't be messy.
message the entire leadership team either. So as head of talent, right, I will say, oh, I found someone, and I will present them to the right people at the company. But then they all say, no, that person messaged me. I talked that they've already had 5 or 6 conversations with them. And then it just gets messy because that person's then lost in the sauce. You've had one-off conversations with 5 people. Well, the magic we do is we move the process. We make them come to a conclusion. If you're just having one-off conversations with people, you're not in an interview, and then you're wasting a bunch of time. So make sure you connect. Even if you know someone there, say, hey, can I connect with the talent acquisition team, the recruiter, and get in the process, make sure my application's right. That's super impressive to us, because then we don't feel like, oh, we were just told to hire you by someone.
Thank you. Thank you for this valuable advice. Would love to move to the third question. Deal breakers. Yes. So what are some of the deal breakers for your ex during the interview process? And what are some of the most memorable interview processes you had or experiences? Maybe there is a cool story to share.
I'll say my biggest pet peeve in the entire world, and then you guys can go with it. I always, one of the first things that I ask any candidate, any applicant, why are you applying for this role, right? What about human agency? What about the Build Fellowship? What about whomever? What about our mission, our values? What about this company and this role is piquing your interest? And why are you the right person? And I can immediately tell if someone has even done the briefest glance of our mission statement, has done a cursory overview of case studies, understands what it is, broadly speaking, right? They're not in the weeds, but broadly speaking, what we do. If they can do that, we can have a conversation. If immediately it's just some bullshit response, the conversation is over, thank you for your time, but why, again, dating, why would I want to continue dating someone that put in 0 effort to get to know me? That's all.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We don't expect you to know the ins and outs, who's reporting to who, but on our applications, one of our prompts, it's an optional prompt, but we say, how would you explain or describe Capital Factory in your own words, right? I worked here for a year before I fully understood what Capital Factory did. We do a lot. We have our hands in so many honeypots and are doing so many things at any one time, but we still, the intention of the question is we still want to hear what is your perception of Capital Factory? What do you think we do? And sometimes people don't even answer that. And we are looking for people who fill out we do leave some things optional to see who is actually going to go that extra mile to be I'm going to make sure this is thoroughly filled out to convey that I want this role. So I think just to piggyback off of Julia, do the research. We don't expect you to know everything, but we expect you to have an understanding of what you're applying for, and any clarifying questions can occur within that interview.
Thank you, Jake.
I would say the biggest faux pas or biggest kind of things that you can do are, again, similar to online dating, right? So say you're in an online dating situation, you don't want to be money hungry, you don't want to seem desperate, you don't want to seem overzealous, you don't want to be aggressive, you don't want to. These are all the same things we're looking for a job, right? If I'm a recruiter and I took the time to read your resume and talk to you, then to their point, right, do your research and have a few things to say and ask and be prepared for that conversation. And then also, I would say send thank you notes, show enough interest that you're, engaged, but also know yourself, right? And know the environments that you're interviewing in and say, maybe, have your own cultural questions ready. And if you get a rejection, sometimes understand that maybe that wasn't the environment for you. It's the same thing in online dating. Thank the person, stay close to the recruiter, because recruiters move around to different companies often, right? And be very courteous. I hated when I was a recruiter and I would handheld someone through a process. I would call them every time they got done with their interview. I would get them, and then, you know, I gave them a tough rejection, and they either got nasty with me, or they basically just said, you know, never talk to me again, never checked in again, those types of things. I would say I've brought probably a handful of people along in my career, every company I go to, and then they could tell you, some of those people, you know, I just bring them along everywhere, every startup I go to. And so, again, talent acquisition, people matter, and so treat them with respect in the process and thank them for keeping you updated. Because guess what? We have 60 people a day to update. Everybody wants to know where they're at. Everybody wants, and if you find a good recruiter that shepherds you through that process, respect that. So I just say, like, I hated when I felt like they just didn't want to respect my time and they wanted to get past me constantly to get to the hiring managers, and they honestly thought that you really had no say-so in the game. And that was always the funnest surprise at the end, you know? It's like, actually, no. Like, you know, the hiring managers do care, and a lot of CEOs, they would tell me flat out, if in a phone screen someone disrespects you, or, you know, is unaware or offends you or is rude to you, I don't ever want to hire them. Because I don't care if they were the CEO's best friend, that they still have to go through the process and they still should be respectful to people.
Did you have such situations?
Yes. So I had a guy, besties with the CEO situation, right? He gets on the phone and he's like, oh yeah, I'll be there at this time. He hadn't even gotten the interview yet. Like, he was just, you know, immediately as presumptuous. He made it through the door, and one time I remember I was interviewing him, and it was a glass door situation like that, where there was a glass door behind me. He starts waving to people behind me in the office because he knew so many people, and I was just abhorred. It was literally like I meant nothing to him in the process. He treated me like dirt. And so the CEO came in and asked me for my feedback, and I just said no. Like, this is a gigantic no red flag to me. He's not going to be respectful to people. He didn't care about me and my position. How is he going to respect every other person? I don't care if it's the janitor here. They should be greeted, talked to. And the CEO said, yes, exactly. That is the culture I want to build here, and I will not let my friend work here. But, you know, so don't be that person. Don't be that guy.
Any cool stories you have to share about, you know, from your experience, there was that one memorable experience where a person really impressed you, or they did something, said hi to a janitor at the office, and then the janitor came to you and said, you know, I really liked Sam. Sam was a good guy.
Yeah, I'll just be quick. I don't remember the role that it was, but we had an individual who applied who didn't necessarily have as much of a relevant background as you might have thought we wanted for this role. And that individual, after applying, took the time to reach out to me, in high level, just say, hey, I know I might not be the traditional candidate that you're looking for. However, these are some reasons as to why I think I would be a great fit, right? And gave me just like 4 simple, quick, like, just that outreach enough to me stood out to really push him through. And then following that, sorry, I said he, it was not a he, it was a she, pushed her through, and then she continued to make it through down the pipeline. And here at Capital Factory, we have so many events going on at any one time. She made it a point to go to a Cup of Capital, I think it was, and to just meet people from the team. It wasn't this like aggressive, hi, I need to meet you, blah, blah, blah. It was more just like a, hey, I'm Kennedy, and this is what I recently applied for, and just introduced herself, less with like the intention of like I need to make an impression, and just more of a like, hey, I'm showing up and showing out, like I'm really interested in what we do here. So not only did they provide that initial like, hey, look, I might not be what you're looking for, but clarified these are some reasons why I think I'd be great, but then showed up to events too. So humanizing that process and not being just, again, a number. I hear people say, I've applied for 100 jobs and nothing, has hit, and I've been there as well, but sometimes less is more, and being more intentional with what it is you're actually applying for and not just casting a broad net.
Wonderful example. Thank you so much.
No, I love it. Yeah, I think this is nothing new, but the market swings in both directions, right? We've seen what happened in 2020. We saw furloughs, we saw layoffs, we saw the hiring craze of 2021, mid-2022, right? Where candidates, it was like your market, I'm making $300,000, wonderful. I don't want to give any recruiter the time of day, so I'm just going to ghost them, to then end of 2022, all throughout 2023, again, the pendulum flipping. And I think like this is nothing new. It's relationship building. It is like actually establishing human to human relationships that are not transactional, that are not like, what can I get out of you? How is this going to serve me, right? I cannot tell you how many times, like, because I work remotely, all of my clients are pretty much all over the place, so the likelihood of me meeting any of my candidates like face to face is slim to none. You want to build a rapport. You want to, and I'm not saying you have to be best friends. This person doesn't have to be like another millennial who is interested in watching like Real Housewives, right? Like that's, if that is your jam, wonderful, fantastic, we'll talk all day. But I think it's just showing care and showing compassion and showing like human empathy and understanding that like, yes, this is a person behind the screen. This person can either be a real asset to you and a real advocate for you, or they can say, this is not, we don't want this type of mentality, we don't want this type of personality in our team, right? So build those relationships, stay close, keep in touch, and just like, you wouldn't be rude to wait staff, don't be rude to like the talent team.
That's my pet peeve. Being rude to wait staff. Okay, let's move on to the next question about salary. Yay! That's a tough one. How do you answer the question about, this salary? What salary you're looking for? How not to price yourself out? How not to, just undersell yourself? Any cool tips? Any cool examples when there was a person who really navigated this process very well, and you can share it with us?
It really depends on where you're at in your career, on how you can name your price, right? And what you're doing. I would say it's getting easier these days because many states, especially if it's a remote job you're applying for, has to state the range of the position. I would say, be honest with the recruiter if you're at the top end or, of the range, and let them know that, in the beginning of the process that might be a challenge for you, right? But then I would say open your mind to possibilities and really think about, okay, I always say they have to price the work, whatever it is, right? The job is the job, and they have a range and a budget for the position. But you don't always want to go in on that, and you don't want to be too aggressive because you can sometimes sell yourself short, right? And so you really need to understand where you are in the market, do some good research, ask some questions. And when they ask you how much money are you looking to make, you can give them a range back. You don't have to say a finite number. And then I always tell them that I'm also interested in other things. So, my last position, I was kind of senior manager level to head of reporting to a CEO. So it was a massive jump. I wasn't going hard on the money because I was like, I need to make sure I could do this job. I actually wanted an advisor. And so I negotiated instead of giving me the top end of the pay range, I actually knew I wasn't the top end of the pay range experience-wise. And so I said, actually, give me an advisor that you'll pay in equity that will take me along. So I got to have my old chief people officer walk me through my job and help me, and she didn't have to do it for free. A lot of times advisors, they have to do what they do for free. It's nice to have looked at that opportunity and said, actually, I just want to learn, get experience, and have somebody that will be paid to kind of help me through and guide me through. So get creative is my option too, if it's not always about money, especially in startups. You can agree the budgets aren't always there, so start to think about what other ways that you can get what you need for your full-on career, not just money. But yeah, equity, bonus, like what can I do to prove myself? There's always a way you can bridge a gap with money, but you don't want to price yourself out immediately, and you don't want to act like that's the most important thing to you. People will know. I will know if you're money hungry. I will sense it in your entire presentation, and it's not going to be appealing. People will know. So if you're really just trying to make a move just to make more money, at least do a good job of hiding it.
There's a reason and a season, right? And so you have to really know what your priorities are in that job search. Like why are you moving? Right? Like what are those answers? Is it a learning opportunity? Is it money? Is it remote? Is it whatever that is? Prioritize that. Like literally make a list for yourself and say like, what are the priorities? What like are must-haves for me? What else do I have to say?
Do you count insurance into the top of the range? Is it like, so you're not gonna give maximum top because, you know, you give the middle plus insurance, right? Is it how it's
total pack?
Total comp?
Total comp matters. If you have no insurance and I'm coming to your company, and well, that was my last situation, I had to set up insurance for them. And so I knew that was gonna be my job. I knew immediately, like, you're gonna have to pay me more cash because I'm gonna go in the door with no insurance plan, right? Like, just know those things, but know that that is something they look at when they budget for the position is, you know, you can bank in, depending on how rich their benefit plans, about 12 to 30% of your salary cost towards benefits and perks and all of those other things is what's typically budgeted.
And I would be strategic too. So if you are coming in and you have like, let's say you have a really niche skill, right? But you are in the more junior side and you're coming in and you're saying, I want to make like 200K. I'm like 2 years out of college, right? What do you think is going to happen when the market turns and you have 2 years of experience and you're at the highest banding? When people are looking at balance sheets, what are they going to say? They're going to say, why are we paying this person 200K for 2 years of experience, right? Like, I think that's the big thing is like, really be strategic. You do not want to put yourself in a situation where you are going to have to look for a role in 6 months, a year, et cetera.
Or if you're like me and you have a ton of experience and you don't care about that, roll the dice, you know? Get yourself a good golden parachute and go into, you know, a good startup and know that no matter what, you're gonna end up okay, right? So if you're gonna really, I wanted the experience. Now I've led talent acquisition and HR at a 300-person company. I got that experience. Now I don't really care that, it, you know, monetarily it didn't really work out. It was a startup. I rolled the dice, but I'm marketable and I can name my price wherever I go.
Reason
right?
of the season.
Yeah. But unless you have that experience and you've gone there and you really rolled up your sleeves and did all the dirty work, it's really hard to get that type of opportunity. And so know yourself and know, you know, but same thing goes for your advantage. So say you have a niche skill and you know, and they're hot on you. They called you. You know, they had a headhunter looking for this position and they're willing to even pay more to hire you. Just don't give, you know, too much away at that situation either, right? If you're in that situation, then you better be ask for more. Let them think you're too expensive, and then when you grace them with your answer to accept their lowly pay, you know, it makes it seem like they won something, right? So just know who you are in the search, just like in dating.
That's the hardest process, to
Yeah.
know who you are. I mean, it takes life sometimes to understand all of that, but thank you so much. So when the recruiter asks you, what is your salary expectation, say the range. And closer to the top, or?
I would say it depends on context, right? Are you talking
Context.
to a recruiter? Are you talking to a headhunter? Are you talking
How
to
do you
in-house
know?
talent acquisition?
I'm probably in house.
Well, LinkedIn, yeah. So if you're talking to, again, if you're applying directly versus you are working with a recruiter, if you're working with an agency recruiter, there are no lies. Do not, like, you want that person to be your advocate. That is your lawyer, essentially. That is your therapist. You do not bullshit that person. Do not lie. Give them the real, honest truth. They will know how to navigate a situation. I once had a candidate who had a 7 a.m. interview because the hiring team was in India, and she flubbed and didn't set her alarm. Oopsie daisy. And so I was fielding phone calls at like 7 in the morning saying, where's this person? Where's this person? I'm like texting. I have like all phones going out. And again, because I really liked her and I knew she was really, really exceptional, what did I say to the hiring manager? I said, oh, there was a power outage in her town, right? Like, you know, and we can work with that. She ended up getting the job, right? Like, she was candidate number one. Had she not felt comfortable to tell me that, and had I also known that she wasn't like right for the role, it would have been a different situation. But like, again, trust, be honest.
When it comes to agency recruiters, though, I will say that I have witnessed some bad behaviors, and just be careful. Because if you want to ask the agency recruiter, what did the company tell you the role for the position is? Because sometimes they are paid in commission, meaning they get 20% of whatever you get hired for. And so they will try to push the range of the role for you. And you want to make it clear, no, I want to be within the range, present me at this range. So definitely tell them what to present you at, and make sure that you two, recruiter and candidate, are clear if you're working with an outside recruiter. In-house recruiters, obviously, they're going to just be straight up with you and tell you what it is, but they're not on commission, right? So just be careful. There are sometimes that relationship can get, you know, and make sure also that they're not sending your resume anywhere that you don't know it's going. There are so many times that I would get a call for a job and I'm like, what? I had no idea. And it was just this recruiter throwing, like I was a part of a marketing email. We're just like, oh, I'm gonna send your resume to 5 or 6 people. Well, you know, that kind of cheapens you, right? If you're just like on this list. So just make sure that you are very trusting and have someone like her that really knows what she's doing.
Working with a reputable partner.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like, this is again where research, discernment come in handy.
And each recruiting firm will have like a LinkedIn page and a website and like people you can see that have verified profiles.
If someone's spending 15 minutes with you and hanging up, are you gonna like trust them with your life secrets? Absolutely not, right? So like, you could, again, gauge what is the firm, who is this person, what are their recommendations saying, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you. Awesome. I think we're ready to wrap up our section, and then we'll open the Q&A. But last question I have, if you would just give one piece of advice for the job seekers, what would it be? Let's start with Nicolette.
I would say I would probably give a softer message in the past, but right now in the climate that we're in, I would say all's fair in recruiting and love, right? Like in war and all of those things. Like it is that world right now. Like you don't know who you're talking to. You don't know, you know, what their perceptions are. You don't know yourself, know the environment that you want to be in, and go with that, right? Right now it's really hard to, we say trust, right? But it really is hard to do that because there's a lot of like fake job postings and people taking your information and those types of things. So I would just say one piece of advice, know yourself, protect yourself in the process, and protect yourself from a bad environment too, right? You don't want to just get so wrapped up in winning the search that you end up somewhere you don't want to be. And so definitely, you know, just know yourself and know where you want to go.
Yeah, I think also, you know, I said it earlier, but really humanizing the process, again, with the amount of applications that are coming in at any one time and just the lack of staff that they probably have to sift through that, and the inaccuracies and erroneous information that AI pulls. It legit, our applicant tracking system gives a percentage of how they think a candidate fits. I don't even look at that because it is so off so often. So again, create humanize the process. And if you apply for a role, see if you can reach out to somebody. That's also the beauty of LinkedIn. If you know somebody who is connected to somebody, you can even tap into them and say, hey, you know, would love to ask some questions, right? I mean, not too aggressively, but, you know, make it aware that you are interested in the role, and tap into as many other people as you can. Capital Factory, we hire a lot of referrals, and so if you know somebody who knows somebody, like, chances are you're going to at least get an interview. So the networking you are all doing here is fantastic. And I think just like not giving up on yourself, as corny as it sounds. It's hard out there. When I first moved here, I applied for a job for over 6 months, hundreds of jobs, nothing was landing. And so there are so many variables and caveats that go into a process like this. You could have been the best candidate for that role and didn't get an interview. There are just so many factors that come into play. And so I guess in this challenging job seeking environment, like also give yourself some grace throughout the process too.
I love that. Yeah, you're your own advocate, right? You're your own best friend. No one is going to have your back as much as you are, right? So whatever that means, set yourself up for success, right? This is nothing new. I'm building on what Nicola said, what Jake said. You know, that's what happens when you go third. But, you know, only you know what your priorities are. Only you know what your goals are. So understand that, and be honest with yourself. Understand what aligns. Please, please, please don't apply to, like, you know, 200 roles like a week. God, I just talked to someone who was like, he had an AI bot just sending out his resume everywhere. And I said, okay, well, what's the ratio on like, you know, getting an interview? And he was like, yeah. He said he had like 2 interviews. So don't do that. Like pick wisely, pick honestly, and really go into it with a humane mindset, right? And I think just like build relationships, because even if that doesn't work out in this process, you're networking, you're making connections. If you're, again, a pleasure to have in class, like they're gonna wanna talk to you again when a role opens up, so.
Thank you. Awesome. I think this evening has showed us that this process is not as, you know, inhumane as we thought. I mean, I will speak for myself probably. I thought it's more like, okay, conveyor, come, go, go, go. But we can see now your side, and we can see that you actually do read the profiles, the resumes. It's about the substance, and if it matches to what you're looking for and it really connects with you, then it's possible to get the interview. You just have to be really truthful. And resilient. Yeah, resilience. Let's go. Okay, and I think we're ready to open the Q&A section. Don't be shy. When are you gonna have 3 recruiters?
I'm going to pass the microphone, so whenever you have a question, raise your hand and I'm going to approach you.
And just mention if you have a question to somebody particular or to all 3 speakers.
Okay. Hi, my name is Yulia, and first I want to thank you all for having time with us and sharing your experience. And this question will be to all. So what about gaps in resume, experience gaps? Because as we know, with market, it can take 6 months, 1 year or so. So what should you do with these gaps in resume, LinkedIn, and when you communicate with a recruiter? Thank you.
I'll be quick. I don't care. I look at the comprehensive, what is their experience? I could care less if you took 3 years off to raise a child or go on a sabbatical or whatever the case is, get a master's degree, or go to school, whatever it is. I personally don't care if you have a gap in your resume, if you have enough on there to convey like, oh, you know, they're qualified because of this, they were there for this many amount of years. You know, I'd rather see a gap in work than multiple jobs at like 6 months to a year. But I think my opinion might be subjective to others and how they view it, and that's really one of the challenges in recruiting, is that it is humans doing this, and so it is subjective. I don't know.
Yeah, I think if it's a recurring pattern, right, and you're continuously at a job for under a year, then we need to do some serious, like, what's happening? What's going on? Am I just like, are my spidey senses off? Am I not like picking the right things? Am like, hi, it's me. I'm the problem. You know, like what's going on? So just know what is the reason for that, right? And sometimes like I moved here, so I have a 6-month on my LinkedIn. I have a 6-month sabbatical. Like I said, auf Wiedersehen to Germany, howdy to Texas, very clear. I also had a mom that passed away like 3 months after that happened. So I started 2 weeks later, I was on unpaid leave, and so I had to restart, right? So that's something, like, we all are people, we all have lives, and I think like you can decide how upfront and how much you want to put out there before an interview versus how much you want to share like once you get an interview. But like, share.
I would say that's 100%. The answer she just gave is the best answer you can give, honesty, right? Were you taking care of a sick parent? Nothing gets me in my heart feels more. Were you taking care of a child? Oh my gosh, what a hard job. You know, like if you're gonna, you know, and if people are gonna insult that and say, oh, she took off time to take care of her sick, you don't wanna work there. You don't wanna work there because they're never gonna understand family, life, then that's the whole reason you're working, right? So if you have time and you were searching for a job, do show activity. Say I was getting a certificate, I worked on time. You know, right now I have an 8-month runway till I have to get at my next job, so I'm gonna take some time, you know, but I'm also gonna improve myself. I'm gonna do things, I'm gonna do some podcasts and do some other things, right, while I'm, you know, so stay active if you can. But if you're caring for someone or doing something, like she said, that is honest in life, tell them, especially if they're recruiters and things like that, so that they can help you navigate that.
Next question.
Hi, I'm Kate Kuehl, and I'm a software engineer, as many of us probably are, women in tech here. And I maybe have a thing that maybe a few of us can relate to is I just had a job, and this is for all of the panelists, that I was applying to, and the recruiter came back and said, oh, you don't have enough technical experience. And I found the job, and I met every single one of the requirements. And the inside of me was a little furious because I was like, everyone, not 80%, all of them. And I was like, okay, something's not going up. And so my question is, like, when that happens, like, how can I go back and be like, no, I am qualified, without, like, I don't want to offend the person, but I also want to be like, can you give me a second chance to look at this? Because, like, I think you might be misreading some of my experience here. Like, how do I say that in a way that makes sense? And I say a lot of this because I think a lot of women have, unfortunately, and there was other reasons that I wouldn't be good for that job. I don't think I had enough business experience. I don't think I had enough leadership experience.
Right? Like, that's the whole thing. When they say it's technical, I always like to know about the other candidate in the process and say, well, what did they have that I didn't? What was some of the end chapter cases that, like, got them ahead of me? Like, who is your top medalist and what did they have that I didn't, is a very good non-aggressive way to find that answer. And sometimes, quite frankly, I'm gonna tell you what really happens. The real of it all is hiring managers either liked, bonded, or did something with someone in that process and they chose someone else, and that recruiter is now, unfortunately, not trained in how to give really good feedback to candidates. That's something, my core skill with recruiters is, you know how hard it is to reject people? Do you know how hard it is to reject people after they really, really want something? Sure. And then the cowardly hiring managers send my poor little recruiter in to do the job. Can you imagine if you could have someone break up with someone for you? It'd be like, instead of ghosting them, right? You would just send that person in and say, yeah, tell them why I didn't want to. They have the luxury of doing that, and so unfortunately you're up against a situation where you're gonna have to ask that recruiter for more context, but they might not get it. That hiring manager might flat out refuse and say, no, I just like this other person more, and you just got to tell them, because that's the legal answer they can give you. But if you dig deeper, like, what did the other candidate have? They can maybe tell you, oh, they had 5 years at this, this, and maybe you can get some other context.
Do you just email them and you
Can I ask a question?
advocate for yourself?
What was the context? So was it like you had applied, or were you in the interview process?
The recruiter had reached out to me at first, and then they were considering me for 2 different roles, and then they were considering me for the more junior of the 2 roles, and then I was like, that junior role would be kind of a step down. I would like to be considered for the senior role, and they were just like, you don't have enough technical experience. And so I went on the website and found the job, and I met all the requirements, and so I'm just like wondering, like, this happened last week, so like maybe. Yeah, it's fresh in my mind. There's a lot of, and I like so respect. Oh my gosh, if someone could break up for me, like that would be
That's what that poor recruiter was doing.
Yeah, I'm just like wondering, like, how do you go back and advocate for yourself or ask, like, even just, can you advocate for yourself for that other role? Can you say, like, hey, I do think this actually would be a good fit? And how would you word that? How would you respond with that without seeming desperate?
Again, I think it depends on context. So I would go through and find out, like, who's that recruiter on LinkedIn? How long have they been in that company? How many years of recruitment experience do they have? Like, are they someone that is confident enough to advocate, or are they someone that's like right out of college and are just kind of given a checklist and they don't know yet, like, what are the questions that I have to ask, or what is the pushback that I need to give, right? So when I'm asking for context, I'm asking also for, like, what is this person's, like, history at that company, and what is that person's, like, overall experience in recruiting, right? There's not a one-size-fits-all answer.
They
but
also might not know.
They might.
So because we also have to speak 17 languages, right? Like I have to. So as a recruiter, right, I have to know IT, I have to know sales, I have to know marketing, I have to know, like, you have to know a little bit about everything. And if someone says they didn't have whatever .html, blah, 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 I'm like, okay, and you just kind of keep moving in your day. You know, they might not have, like, taken note enough, like, to understand what that meant, and then to have to regurgitate that to you is a very sticky situation. And also, as recruiters, we're legally bound, but to not, you know, mess up the process, right? We can't say to someone and give them ammo and say, oh, that person, or even if they said to you, like, that man that got the job had this or that, right? Like, like anything that comes out of your mouth in that rejection conversation can be legally held against you. And so it's just you know, you might not always get, but the people who might, if you got any hiring manager's information within the interview process, have a coffee with them. After they've made the hire or whatever, you know, you connect with them and get to know the company. There's going to be another door. It's going to be worth your time to continue to network there. There was someone in the process they liked more, but it doesn't mean you weren't qualified. They took the time enough to tell you, and if they continue to tell you, here's the other feedback the other candidate had and all this stuff, even better, even more open door. But you got to know if that recruiter is savvy enough to do that and to go back. It just depends.
And it can be a timing issue too. It can be like they might have already had someone, like, in final stages, and you know, and they just had the role open because of as a backup, right?
Hiring managers always want to see a couple more.
Yeah,
let me see a couple more. Oh, if we could have a speech about what hiring managers do, that would be my, you know, I could give me 5 hours on a panel. But, like, you just give me a couple more. I'm like, no, these are people's lives.
Yeah,
like, if you like this person, hire them. If not, then we're going to start spinning wheels. And you might have been a spin the wheels candidate, unfortunately. They might have already had this person in mind, and they brought you along just to see, is this something, or are you a bargain? Sometimes they want a bargain shop. They would say, oh, well, this person has 20 years of experience. I can get them, and they're willing to come work for me. I want to interview this other candidate before I say yes to this other person. It's a game.
But you can always, like, send an email back, be cordial, be polite, and you can always argue your case and say, like, you know, I'm a little bit confused by this. Can you elaborate? Is that possible? Because this is what this means. So, like, relay what's on your resume, like, to the job posting and say, like, I'm just confused. If you can elaborate, great. You're never going, like, that's never going to be a red mark against you. You might not hear back, is all.
It's scary to email that sometimes.
We're just people. We're not so scary.
Any other questions? Okay.
Start that. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks again for your speech. Like, I enjoyed all of the questions, answers. It was enjoyable. My question is maybe specific for the Ukrainians. So lots of us came nowadays. They have specific statuses, work permits. So my question, how do you navigate work authorization and so on? Like, is it a deal breaker for you, or no one cares exactly? Like, if you know, like, this person kind of has, like, work permit that would be expiring in a year or two, like, how would you navigate that?
So this is very sticky, especially now, right? What a relevant question. I would say that my experience is probably not the best to answer this question. I'm in startup modes. So most startups do not have the infrastructure from HR perspective to house your visas. That's actually a project I was working on in my last company. It was partnering with different companies to be able to have the compliance HR infrastructure to make it through that, right? If you're a startup, so that's really hard to do. And so I would say, usually in my process as a recruiter, I will make it clear, hey, we can't do that, so you don't waste your time. Don't apply here, we cannot do that. Or we'll ask up front and say, hey, and we will let you know, hey, your rejection's based off of, we don't have the infrastructure to house your visa. But that's me. I believe in telling people what it is. But some people won't, and you'll be applying and you'll be wondering why. But it is okay to ask, do you have other employees there with these situations? Do you, get to know this, whether or not it is a visa-friendly workplace, and most of your bigger companies will have more infrastructure for that.
So I think because of war, there is a lot of situations when you don't need a visa because you are in a specific status and you do have a work permit for a year or two, meaning you pay taxes, W-2, everything is fine. But I think some companies ask you about that stuff. Can they legally ask you if I have a work permit, I can work for a year and two, is it fine? It's, I don't need any, support.
What I always will say, and must have, you have to answer this question, right, is will at some point, will human agency need to sponsor you for any sort of visa, right? Do you have legal authorization to work in the US, right? Those are the two questions. But I just want to say, as a reminder, I'm not an HR professional, I'm talent, right? I'm recruitment. A lot of these larger companies, as we said, will have actually global mobility teams. They'll have legal teams. There are immigration lawyers that are internal that are doing this. They also have their outside counsel, outside immigration firms that work on this. So if there's a good process and if there's good communication, then the recruitment team will know and will be able to give you an answer immediately. If there's not, they won't be able to. And as right now, we're in a situation where even global mobility professionals are we don't know what's happening, right? It's all up in the air. So I think a lot depends on the organizational structure.
Case by case, basically.
Case by case. But those are the two questions that I will generally have on the website that I want answers to. Yeah.
Sorry, it just but would you accept the person knowing that, for example, they don't require the visa, they're not asking for the visa, but you saw that actually their work work permit expires in about 2 years. Would you go ahead with that person or no?
I think it depends on the leader.
Okay.
It's not I look at my leader and say, you know what, we're in a startup right now. We're not going to be the same company in 2 years. Mm-hmm. If they can get this job done in 2 years and it's the nature of the job, they'll do it. It's just, will the recruiter go ask questions for you? Will they go find out more, right? And yes, I would if my leader said, yeah, I'm totally fine if it's 2 years. It wouldn't bother me.
Mm-hmm. There's also agencies, a lot of times if a role is difficult to fill and this company Realtor.com is working with an agency, right? One of their specific mandates will be we're going to be willing to pay this $20K, $30K, $40K fee because we are wanting to find someone that does not need sponsorship, right? That does not need that. So again, this is also circumstantial. Who are you talking to? What stage of growth is this company in? What infrastructure and ecosystem do they have? Does the recruiter that you're talking to seem well versed? Do they know even what you're talking about when you say I'm on a STEM OPT, right? Do they know what to say? How many years do you have left on that, right? There's
I wouldn't say I would. Most companies, I'm Startupville, right? I've said most of the startups are we can't even if we wanted to. So
yeah.
Got it. So we just don't know background of the really
to them.
Yeah.
Just like you did with me, right? If I don't know if I seem to going off on a sponsorship tangent, say, oh no, this is a specific situation, and most of the time they'll say, oh, that's interesting, and then further, we have to run everything up the flagpole. So
yeah, we're never the decision makers, everyone. We are the decision facilitators.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, our next question.
This is for the entire panel. So I've had the a non-traditional career where when I got out of college, I became an entrepreneur. But so I've decided to sort of exit that space. And one of the questions I have is regarding storytelling. So while my entrepreneurship journey wasn't successful, there was definitely a lot of experiences and networks that I got connected to. So when I'm creating my resume or sort of telling my story to a recruiter so that I don't get like auto rejected, or at least I get a foot in the door so I get an interview, how would you sort of craft that story so that you can at least get a foot in the door where you're like, okay, let me explain to you why I'm such a good candidate. What are the, I guess, unique skills that I got from this journey that other candidates wouldn't necessarily have?
Are you looking to like stay in startup, or are you like trying to shift sectors?
So I'm looking for a role in sales, essentially, because that's essentially what
Okay.
startup.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
that experience of always selling to customers to then, and I'm looking in two sectors, sort of real estate and tech, because that's where my startup was. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think, we currently have an account executive now who is, thriving in their job, and they had their own startup beforehand. It didn't take off, and maybe there's this sense of like, oh, my startup failed, and so like that's not going to be something that a hiring manager, someone's going to think is a good thing, or whatever the case is. But you were able to get it far enough, like the reality is, in the startup land, a lot of them fail, right? And so the fact that you were able to brick by brick build that out enough, there are so many transferable skills in running and developing and creating your own startup to then want to go into sales. That's like, to me, that would be like yes, they know what it takes to grind, what it takes to pitch. They have what it takes to be in a sales type role. And so, I'd be happy to look at your resume and help you craft that. But I think the amount of transferable skills that come from a founder, regardless of the success of the company, transferable to sales makes total sense. And so I think it's really about, like you said, that storytelling component and how you can convey that. But to me, that's a huge green flag.
And for interviews, I would say just be cautious, because people, when I've brought entrepreneur candidates to my hiring managers in the past, they have a natural fear that you're not going to want to work for someone.
Yeah.
That you want to be your own boss, and especially if you're going for sales roles, right? The rogue salesperson is everyone's worst nightmare. So I would just say, like, make sure that if you are telling your story, one, transferable skills are your number one friend, but then two, that you show your willingness to do anything, and just be real about that and say, yeah, I will cold call, I will do these things, because it will show your ability to not just want to go straight to the top, right? So just be cautious when you're interviewing that you don't come off that way, and that you are perfectly self-aware that you don't want to do that again, that you want to go this route again. Just make sure you're making that clear, because some people, it just takes them hearing that from you to be reassured.
Yeah, have a good answer for why you don't want to continue down the entrepreneurial path, right? And focus on, I would say, like the big thing, because I work with someone who's a serial entrepreneur. He would be the worst employee of all time. Like, just he wouldn't. It's not in his DNA. It wouldn't be. He couldn't do it, right? So I think, again, that's something that when we are hiring like a chief of staff or a managing director, you can have that experience, but it's really about how you're positioning yourself and how you're saying, like, these are the transferable skills to this role that I'm applying for. So it really, again, depends on like the role that you are applying for and where you see your skill set. There are people that I've spoken to that are like, I love being an entrepreneur, I love this experience, but I learned that I am much more of an operator, right? And so what have you learned? What is the lesson that you have learned that the years of being an entrepreneur have taught you into why are you pivoting, right? And then just have, if it's sales, data, numbers. They want numbers. Sorry, that's all.
Hello, my name is Alex. First of all, thank you for your time that you came here and sharing experience and the knowledge with us. My question to the whole panel, and maybe it's a bit tricky question, so it's kind of backstory to the Ukraine, where I came from, like a lot of people here as well. So when you've been, maybe it's a fancy word, but again, I'm not a native speaker. So when you've been a popular in Ukraine, I'm talking about when you were a co-founder of a company with 44 people, when you had a non-profit organization for people with disabilities, and it was like super popular, where you won a lot of like awards, like IT awards in the country, on a country level, right? And a lot of other stuff. So I feel like when you're applying here, you should be, and don't take this word as an offensive, but you should like put this all down, just put on the work experience and be like regular human being, like nothing about that. Because most of the time I heard that, oh my God, you're overqualified. Like, guys, I've applied to the job. I want to work with you, right? It doesn't mean that I'm overqualified because I already applied that. This like statement that I want to, like have a journey with you together. So yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
To make sure you have a chance to have a really successful career.
To hide something, to hide, and maybe when you speak deeply, to show. And a lot of my friends say, yeah, hide, better hide.
I hate this. Yeah. And I hate it, yeah. I mean, again, I can't speak for everyone. I can speak for like the situations like that I've been, I can speak to my experience, right? Like, I think have any news, press, articles, all that stuff on your LinkedIn, right? I think show your experience, show what you've done, show what your accomplishments are. Let people know, again, reason and a season, that you are now in the US for a very specific reason, right? Sometimes, in this case, like a lot of you wouldn't have necessarily chosen to come here if you didn't have to, right? So you're kind of dealing with extenuating circumstances. And because of that, knowing that you're in a new market, knowing that you're in a new language, that you're doing all these, you're building everything from scratch again. So I think like let people know and have that, whether it's in a mission statement, on your resume, on your LinkedIn, let people know what you bring to the table, but also that you are interested in a broader scope of work. Right? And in learning maybe new skills or learning culture, you're taking time to take language classes. And so you're not necessarily looking to be like the head of a nonprofit right now, right? Like, I think, again, this linear trajectory, most of us don't have this anymore, right? Like, it's not something we've dealt with so much. I mean, as a millennial, like there have been so many extenuating circumstances outside of our control, from like a financial crash in 2008 to a 2016 election to a COVID pandemic to a 2024 election. Like, we have no control. What we can control is how we are reacting to that hand that's being dealt. And so, again, I want to see grit. I want to see perseverance. The fact that you guys or anyone that's in this situation has left the safety of like their network and their home and their career and is coming to a new country to have a new life. I don't like, this is such an ineloquent way of like saying this, but like, don't shy away from that. Like, I would say, I would lean into it, right? And again, you might not be for everyone. There might be organizations that say like, okay, TMI, or it's not for us. They're not right for you.
Just another thing on that point is just don't, like, one, there are the transferable skills, and if you find a really good recruiter, please link in with me, whatever. There are ways to take a job description and what it says and put in your work and what you've done similar things, right? To his point, transferable skills. And sometimes it's changing the way that you described your work. So some CEO profiles will say like led, spearheaded, very, talk about the times you got your hands dirty, right? In your resume, talk about the times where you, I don't know, like as a CFO, I always like to see when a CFO has done a few bank reconciliations in the past few years. Great, good. You were willing to do what your team needed to do to get things done, right? So, don't shy away from saying, yes, I've done all these things, but these are the things that I've done that are relatable to what I'm going to be doing, and maybe change your bullets to read to that and be more humble bullets, right? That are like, show that you are a servant leader. Right, show that you're somebody that can, partner with somebody, entry level all the way up to I can talk to a board, and it's the way that you describe the work that you do. It's the certain words that you choose, right? It's not somebody works for me. It's they're on my team. You're a collaborator. It's the way that you talk about yourself. Same similar advice to you, right? It's how you talk about what you do that will let people know whether or not it's really what they're trying to make sure. Similar to what I told you. Are you cool enough? Can I manage you? Yeah. Right? Can I come in and you're willing to roll up your sleeves and work with me versus like I know you could lead me? Yeah. That's what they're intimidated by.
Yeah, I guess I have experience. My fiance is from Afghanistan, and he had an experience where he had to start as a factory worker, even though he was pretty high up fighting the Taliban, and had all this military experience, and was I shouldn't say the military title because I don't know the exact military title, but like he had to downplay it, unfortunately. But the nice thing is you can pick the job you want, and you have all this experience to go from, and then tailor your job exactly to how they want to do. And yeah, you're kind of downplaying it, unfortunately, and I think a lot of immigrants do this, and I think as Americans, we need to be better about hiring people from other countries. I think we need to do a better job at it. I don't think he should have had to work at a factory worker, but the nice thing is he rose up pretty quickly, and then we redid his resume, and he now manages 5 people, including Americans. And so, and we took part of his former experience as a pilot, and we have a plane on his LinkedIn, and we kind of have branding around that we made. So you can hopefully rise up pretty quickly, but I don't know, pick the job you want and take all the experience and directly tie it to that. Is my take.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of hands. I know you're going one by one.
Hi, my name is Jasenia. It's my first event here. I want to say thanks for having a space for female technologists, or as much of a female space as we can muster. So I wanted to touch upon what y'all said earlier about how whenever you get rejected by a recruiter, or your candidates are rejected, they kind of just stop touching base with you. They stop following up with you. So I graduated in December of 2022. So during my internship search and my new grad search, I did get a lot of recruiter contacts. And I'll be honest, I didn't really follow up with any of the recruiters if I didn't get the internship, or even if I did, I wasn't like touching base with them. So I'm wondering, how would you, I guess, rekindle those relationships with those recruiters without seeming, I guess, fake? Because I guess I would say whenever I was in my internship search, my new grad search, some of the advice was to like not appear as fake. So like not reach in just to catch up, because it would appear as if you're interested in an ulterior motive. So now I'm kind of hearing the opposite, where it's like, oh, even you should try to catch up with me. So I'm just curious, like maybe
you haven't been out of the game that long. It's 2 years or 3 years. Like
in LinkedIn, that's forever.
Well, no, if you had gone, some people have the nerve. I haven't talked to them so they'll reach out, and they don't. Here's what I get offended by: they don't look at where I am currently. They'll reach out to me like I was at a company like 10 years ago, and they were like, hey, can you get me a job in AI? And I'm like, I haven't talked to them in forever. And so as long as you do current research and you say like, hey, we talked X amount of years ago, flattery never kills. I was really impressed with our conversation, whatever it is. If you can remember anything unique, call it out. And then say, I would love to grab a virtual coffee. people, are pretty open to it. But then say, if you are in a job search, say, this is what I'm doing. And I would love to grab a coffee so they have context for the meeting. If you're just trying to catch up and continue to refresh your network, then be honest about that too, right? Say, I'm not actually looking right now. I just want to continue my networking and catch up with some people. But be honest about your intentions so that we can prioritize in our day who we're talking to. If it's someone that needs help, recruiters hear that. We are most of the time very empathetic people, and if it's someone that needs help or is an active job search, then I'm going to spend time talking to them versus people that are just trying to catch up. So be cognizant of that too.
So just be honest, like, I really just want to rekindle our connection because it's been a couple years. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Virtual coffee, not a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. People will be open to it because recruiters need networks. We need them. We need to be able to pull from our network at a moment's notice all the time. So.
Hey. Hello, my name is Roya. Thank you so much for all the insights and sharing your experiences. One question that I have is I would love to know your opinion about cover letters. I know it's kind of challenging especially for us as international people. I would love to know that how do you like the narrative to be? Like, do you like?
I have a confession. I don't read a cover letter.
Okay. It takes a lot of time.
I mean, again, not every company has different requirements. Mine is it's optional.
Make your LinkedIn your cover letter.
Thank you.
Tell your story on LinkedIn. Have a nice little LinkedIn blurb, because what I'm going to want to know first is, do you have the technical skills? Then I'll kind of go back and maybe want to know more about your life story. Sometimes someone is so off base as a candidate, I'll read the cover letter because I'm like, why did they apply? What is going on? And so then I'll get some good tea leaves, right? But that's really the only reason I use a cover letter. If I'm like, this resume just is not in tune. Lead with your resume. But I will say, I am not every recruiter, and it's sometimes good to have board coverage, like I like to call it, right? Have it out there if you want to say some nice things, but I would say it's more important to have a LinkedIn that they can click through and go read about you or find out more about you. Yeah. When you're moving, though, from a different country and things like that, that is a good space to have like a blurb. I wouldn't call it a letter. Mm-hmm. I would say very high level, this is what's happening in my life and this is what I'm trying to do, and that's okay. You don't give the whole interview in the cover letter. I'm telling you, I've had 6-page cover letters where I'm like, I don't need to interview this person. I know their entire life story. And so don't do that. But I would say it's okay to give them context in a cover letter, but it's a nice to have and definitely not a must have.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. I really agree about the LinkedIn. I didn't want to have, I didn't want to be telling my story in my LinkedIn about me bio, and then I had a workshop with actually person from LinkedIn, and he was like, damn, you have such a cool story. Say it in first sentence. And kid you not, that first sentence starts so many conversations with recruiters when you're actually truthful and you just explain where you're coming from, the background. And it serves better than any cover letter. I don't know if they even read my cover letters, but they definitely read that first sentence in my bio on LinkedIn. And I was so shy to write it. I was like, no, I'm not gonna do this. And
coming from Germany and trying, how formal and you don't say anything. No one is personal. There's no personality. You're here, I'm a potato. A working potato. I remember so nervous to update my LinkedIn and show a personality that it was it was baby steps. I really had to ease into it. So don't jump off the deep end. Now I have emojis. I think mine says cat mom, podcast enthusiast. Now I'm unhinged, right? And I fully lean into that because that's my vibe. That's the brand. But
and that's what recruiters doing. You imagine we're reading all these boring resumes all day. It's so fun to click on someone's LinkedIn and be like, oh my gosh, they're a person. They like dogs, and they've been here, they lived here, they've gone to this school. It's good to just see the context on your colorful, kind of page versus your resume where we're trying to get through text and get, like I said, we're studying for a test, right? We want the relevant information so we don't have to read through a bunch of stuff. It's just about about like placement of that information.
I have had like my jobs, they've been like a year or less, and because I was a contractor and I put on my resume like contractor in parentheses, and in this like most recent job I had, because I was laid off for a year, then I got this job, and 3 months in they were doing layoffs, and so I was like, okay, I have to apply again. So, and I didn't want to apply because I wanted to like grow somewhere, but like how do you tell someone like when you've had so many contracts and you've only been there for like 6 months to a year to like being at this job where it's not a contract, and how honest can you be about like, yeah, I want a new job because they're doing layoffs and I'm scared I'm going to be next. So how do you navigate those conversations?
So can I just ask a follow-up question? So you have been primarily a contractor?
Yeah, at different places.
Okay.
Yeah.
The contracts have been like longer term, so at least like 8 months, like 9 months.
A year.
A year.
Yeah.
Okay. And now you're in a full-time job, but they did not plan well,
Mhm,
right? So they did not plan their runway well, and now they're laying people off.
Mhm.
And you see that happening. Yeah. And so, how long have you been in the current role?
Like 8 months.
8 months? Okay. This is a really interesting question. And
Just grab the microphone from Jake or someone.
This is a really interesting question. I think that you have to indicate that this is a full-time job. The question is going to come up, why are you looking? And you can be honest and say, I have not been laid off, but I see what's happening. I have not been part of a RIF yet. I see the writing on the wall, and I am getting ahead of the situation, right? Like that's, again, you're controlling your own destiny rather than like letting something happen to you, right? So I think that's smart. That's like you're planning, you have foresight, you're like taking control. So I would highlight that. More often I would get like the question of like, if you've been a contractor for so long, like why are you transitioning to full-time, right? Like why? And just as long as, if you have an answer to that, and again, this is like a similar storytelling to like an entrepreneur, why? Why do you, why do you want to go from being a contractor who's essentially, you can kind of come in and come out and you can sort of have boundaries in a way that full-time employees don't always get to have. Yes, I would just have a why.
I would also be honest about like, I would also say like in the beginning of your career was consulting and contracting was actually advantageous to me. And I would say that I actually wanted as much experience as I could get, and that it made me a very diverse person. It's also okay to explain to people sometimes, and I don't know if this is your case, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I see consultants sometimes, they'll tell me, I didn't really know what I wanted to do for a little bit. And so I wanted to go into different environments to really get a good, kind of rubric for what I was looking for before I sat at a company for 20 years to do it. Right? And so consulting is honestly dating before marriage, right? It's like you can go date a bunch of companies and go figure out what's going on. And then you could say, okay, these are the things I liked and didn't like. And if you're being laid off, it's okay to say, I see the writing on the wall. I don't want to be in this situation. I really do want to stick and grow. And then most important for you is to explain to them why you're looking at them for the place that you want to be. You're really just going to have to prove this is why I want to be there specifically, and have those real reasons for yourself. Hey, I'm looking for stability. Be real about that. I'm looking for growth. It looks like this is the field that I could do that in, right? Whatever those reasonings are, I think just being really honest and real. Recruiters are your best advocates too. Once I hear someone's story like yours, if you're real with me, I can then take that to my hiring manager and sell that as like, that's a good story, right? Is like someone went out and got a ton of experience. This permanent role isn't working out and they wanted permanent. So you have a good sellable story. I would say just stick with it.
Position it like any of those consultants from like Bain, McKinsey. They all like, they're coming from Wharton, they're coming from God knows where, and they go into consulting because they want that experience. They want to work on a ton of different projects. They want a ton of different industry exposure.
That's what these fancy executives are telling me.
That's all they're telling you. You're doing the same thing.
You're in consulting. So I would just tell the same story.
Hi, I'm Shanda. I appreciate that you all have experience with or seem to advocate for non-traditional candidates. And I'd like to come back, if I could, to a common women's challenge. Yulia stole my thunder a little bit earlier, but I'd like to drill down a little bit more. Studies show that the motherhood penalty is very real. What advice do you have specifically for caregivers re-entering the paid workforce? How do you recommend notating the employment gap on LinkedIn and your resume specifically? Do you recommend trying to relate your caregiving experience to the role you're interested in, or is it best to reach for more direct professional experiences? And just your best tips for presenting yourself as a legitimate candidate. Asking for a friend, thanks.
Well,
Thank you for asking.
I will give you a personal story. November of 2022, I was searching for my next role and said, oh, wait, it's this great time to get pregnant. You know, didn't have a next space yet. So then I had to interview for an executive position when I have to tell them my first year there, I'm going to need 3 months out. Right? So, because you don't have to tell them that information, but it is very, you know, especially if it's my first executive role, I wanted to be clear about what my timeline was, my expectations. And when I'm talking to a CEO, I was very clear. Coming in, hiring a team, building them, and prepping them for my leave is going to be top priority, right? And I've got to get them going, so when I come back, something's still there. So I would say when you have a gap for caregiving, especially my husband actually decided to stay home, so I'm helping navigate him through this now as he's trying to get back into the workforce. And this is a theme for me, right? You do not want to go into a company that does not understand that you are a working human at home. And that everything, if they don't understand, if they didn't have exposure to what a mom or dad is, like, I feel sorry for them, and they're not going to build a culture that's kind, right? Yeah, when someone tells me they were a mom for a year, I'm like super impressed by that. I'm like, wow, that's amazing, great job, right? But let them be the showers of you. You're screening them too, right? If they gawk at the fact that you stayed home, think about what it's going to be like to work there. If the right recruiter will say, great, I'm glad that you took your time off. Okay, what are the skills that you have that are relevant to this job? It won't even be a part of the major conversation. And if you haven't worked recently, that's going to be most of their concern. They're going to want to know, hey, how recent were your skills? How quickly will it take for you to get ramped up? Have those good answers ready and say, yeah, though I've been out, these are some of the things that I've done to keep relevant to my field, whatever that is, right? And so I would just say use it more of a screener for them and say, how are you going to treat me as somebody that came in with all these amazing skills, you know, and how are you going to use that to your advantage? It's more of them to get creative in that sense. So don't always take that as a female that's a downgrade on you. It will be a plus in the right environment.
And use any opportunity you can, right? In your job search, do trainings, like get a project management certification, like whatever the case may be. Like if that's going to help you, LinkedIn, perfect, amazing. Coursera, amazing. And again, this depends on the organization. I've had working parents put on their resume like chief operating officer of this household, like, and made it kind of like a fun, quirky thing where they're like managing like the day-to-day logistics and activities of like 2 tiny humans, or and kind of bring some personality into it. Again, it really depends on like your personal comfort.
The personality of the company you're applying to too. Sometimes they'll have, like, if they talk about their personal lives and their personal bios on the company website, then that's a good indicator that they're going to want to know personal things about you.
And look at their leadership team.
Yes.
Look at the executive team. Look at the board.
Yeah.
Okay, I have last question here, but if you have some others, just raise the hand so I know. But yes, sorry. Grab some. I know it takes some time to get off this high chairs.
Hello. So I'm a software engineer, and I came from Ukraine like a year and a half ago, and I didn't need to look for a job, but I decided to update my resume just in case, And my biggest struggle was to everyone is saying emphasize key points and metrics in what you've did in your previous jobs, but I'm a software engineer, and it's I understand when like senior guys work on some really nice projects which influence something, but in general, when you're junior, for example, or middle, you usually just do the tasks from Jira, you know, and no one just tell you what this task influenced or something. So I actually do not have, especially like previously in Ukraine, I didn't need to emphasize real numbers. So usually when you just describe your experience, you describe like the tech stack and the project which you're working on, and people understand what I like. And also I emphasized like key features that I worked on so they could understand my like proficiency with technologies, you know. But here I found out that I need some metrics, and I have no idea what to emphasize. Like I started like to think, okay, what I've done, you know, and even some metrics that came to my mind, I have a lot of questions about them. For example, like even if I have like now access to real metrics, what metrics my job is influenced on, like I have no idea. Does this metrics have sense when like people read it? For example, like I don't know, I increased like my project increased, I don't know, some metrics from 1% to 3%. Like it doesn't look very like you know, nice, you know. Or for example, I introduced like unit testing culture in my company. It's actually a big deal in technical perspective. I was pushing that. I was like unstoppable, but what influence does it have on business, you know? So like, can you please elaborate, like, can you give me recommendations? What like metrics can I emphasize that will make sense, that will not be a lie, you know, because I need to really memorize like from my previous years what I've did, and I don't want my like previous colleagues just to read them and like, what is that like? So I want to be honest, but I also want to sell myself, you know. So, and this is my biggest struggle for now. Thank you.
So I would say it's important to tell the story. Sometimes it's just relevant, the company and the team that you were on, right? What were they working on? Give a good framework. You're not always, so you're the reason why technical recruiters exist. Yeah. Right? Because I am a bad technical recruiter. I will tell you that all day. When it comes to technical recruiting, you give me the list of requirements, and to your point, can they do a technical job that's sometimes repetitious? It's not super tied to but it all has impact. Everything you do, there's a purpose for you doing it, or they wouldn't be paying you to do it. And so I would say, just giving the context so that a non-technical person could understand the story is about as far as you're going to have to go. The right technical, and then you will find a great technical recruiter, probably an agency recruiter, that can help you dive deeper. They're going to ask you better questions. I would network. I have one in my network actually that I can give you. The right technical recruiter will ask you these questions and understand what makes you stand out, because they're going to try to sell your background. Right? And so the right technical recruiters are going to pull that information out of you, and they're going to say, okay, but when you were working on this, did you do this? Did you do these things? And they know in technical recruiting speak, what are your skills that are closest to the money? I say this a lot, closest to the money. It just, for me, it's reporting to a board, right? That's a very big skill that not a lot of people have, that's closest to the money. Whatever it is and what you do that make sure you're saying it over and over again, right? And that you show that you've progressively mastered these skills, right? And that you might have gone from trying to do it in the beginning of your career to then now I'm doing it. As long as you're showing progression in your story, right? That it's not necessarily for you going to be about the big wins in revenue, but it's going to be the big wins in your own technical prowess. And the right technical recruiters, and you forget you're speaking to technical hiring managers too. They don't necessarily want all the, I call it G&A recruiter speak. They hate the sales speak. Actually, when I would partner with those hiring managers, they're like, stop with the fluff, Nicolette. Stop selling me. Can they do these things? So it's actually kind of advantageous for what you do that you have a very technical resume. That makes sense. But the right technical recruiter can help you pull out that nice story to tell along with it that will make you more kind of memorable in people's minds, if that makes sense.
A good learning experience from this. Every time you start a job, start Excel file where you Yes. You historically note all the achievements, all the projects. 50 Jira tickets solved. This is the timeline. This is the teams I work with. MLS, I don't know, marketing, sales, keep records. I know we don't have it in our culture in Ukraine for sure, but something you have to do. Just keep records. Any wins. You think it's a small win, it still matters. It is. At the end of the day.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think a lot of it depends too on like what were you working on? What were the projects? Were they strategic initiatives? Were they like transformations? Were they operational, like business integral, right? Like what thematically have you been working on? Like is there a red thread? When you look at your career and you say, oh, I have been on a lot of like actually strategic initiatives, even if it's like driving a new testing process forward, right? Like you were hired for something, you know? Yeah.
It might not seem as interesting because it's technical, but again, you're being hired by technical people. It's going to be interesting to them. But to your point, it has to read to somebody like me so that I can get there, right? The right recruiter will help you write that story.
Okay, last question, and we're gonna move to the networking part.
Really cool.
Wow, this feels like an honor. Hi guys, I'm Nabiha. I'm a UI UX designer and web developer, and my struggle is that I have only ever worked at startups and also been a founder where I've had to work very cross-functionally and wear like every hat under the sun. And so what this means is that I feel like for some background, so I did UI UX design and product development at a startup that exited last year. I've worked for a med tech SaaS company. I've worked for social tech. I had my own company where I helped women make friends and made like $11,000 off of 400 customers in a few months. And I have worked for VC-backed companies out of Stanford and all these things. But I feel like even though maybe I've had that experience, I feel like I don't really know what I do because I've done so like product and like UI UX and then front end development. And it's like, if I were to go and apply for a company or interview for a company that is not a startup that maybe wants you to do one job and not 10 jobs, I don't really know how to pitch myself, brand myself for that. So that's something I'm currently struggling with. So I'm currently offering like services to like local companies for UI, UX, and web development. Those are like the two things I'm focusing on right now. But if I want to get a full-time job, like what do I do?
Well, do you like building from scratch?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay. So do you want to keep building from scratch?
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you want to go into a company that already has an established like brand, has established like interfaces, has like a really like planned out like customer journey, et cetera? Like, do you want to go in and like tweak what's already been there, or do you want to go in and like build from the ground up?
So I feel like I've done a little bit of both. Maybe not so much the tweaking. I've been more on the building from the ground up side in my experience. And building from absolute scratch is very difficult. And I would love to do that again one day as a founder in the future. But I think right now I would like to go to like existing infrastructure and have a lot of creative control, just not be like maybe a founder or anything.
Yeah. But do you want to be like in, let's say like Series A, Series B, maybe in like raising that round, or do you want to be like in pre-IPO? Like, I'm just trying to understand, and this is maybe a conversation that you and I can have later, because it's so design specific. But I think like ask yourself that question, like what do you really love to do, and why do you feel that you should be doing X, Y, Z? You know what I mean? Like, what is the end goal? And I'm going to talk to you later.
It's hard because at startups you do everything, but I would say you definitely know what you don't want to do again. Start there. Oh, work backwards. Yeah. I can tell you I don't ever really want to do tech recruiting again. No offense to anyone, right? Like to be in the druthers of those resumes is really hard for me, right? So I know that I can't go and be the technical recruiter. I can run a technical recruiting team. But I can't, so again, that's if I start to look at, as I'm planning, because all my experiences in startups as well, I have to really look at what I don't want to flexible, but stick to what you want. That's the luxury here. Is you don't have to go and you have, it's on you to define what you want and then go get that. So you have, the nice thing is you have all the skills.
Yeah, and if you have trouble doing that, do you guys what I'm good at, what I want to do, and it's like a Japanese exercise. It helps you identify where you can actually go. So, thank you so much. Would it be okay for our attendees to connect with you on LinkedIn, ask questions? That's awesome. So we're opening up some networking and we'd love to take a picture together. Yeah, let's do a picture. Yeah.
Okay.
Logan is here, so come here, please. Everybody come here. Let's do a picture.
Yeah, with everybody.
Okay, so we're just gonna do the selfie from here. So everyone go behind us. Yes, let's have our awesome women in the front. Okay, ready? Julia, just a second, come here, we need the picture.
Yeah, come here.
Давай краще на...
Давай всі стісняться сюди підійти.
Yeah, I think we have everyone.
Come here, some closer, please.
Потім
Come
я
here,
зроблю
please.
всі.
Like, we're getting the whole room in the selfie. From this dancing on your bladder.
There. Yeah, we're gonna do the selfie. I will need you somewhere in the center.
We can put a phone on a chair with 5
Yeah, I will. Yeah. Okay.
Повернутися туди і стати ну якби лицем сюди.
Oh yeah, turn around. And now we'll have to ask again the shorter people to go in front. Yeah. Okay, great. Just because of the light. Okay. Okay, now it's amazing. Now everything is in light and not in the shade.
Yeah. Somebody who's taller.
Yeah, I think. Okay, can I see your speakers, Ola? Yeah, we're ready. Ola. Yeah, Jake, I can see you. Yes, okay. Ready?
There are 3 photos. One without smile, one with smile.
Okay, thank you very much. Feel free to grab some snacks, grab the speakers, grab other people, network. And also, if you want to leave earlier, please don't forget to reach out to me or any other host for the validation if you've parked here.
Oh yeah, validation.